Growing up as a kiddo in the 2000s with access to an internet connection, it was basically inevitable that I become interested in art and furry culture. God forbid. I'd grown up with a lot of the early furry exposure medias, as it were. The Lion King, Robin Hood, Neopet, Club Penguin, Webkins, you name it. I was doing it. I was also already really into drawing, and finding out that other people online were just as passionate as me was a huge breath of fresh air. Not only were other people as passionate as me, but they also had these quirky little characters that used to represent themselves called Fursona. This is gonna sound a little weird, but back on early DeviantArt, a Fursona wasn't necessarily an indication that you were a furry. It was more so just something you did as part of the culture. To the degree that some people would, and honestly still kind of are, would be offended if you grouped them into the furry fandom. But when you're 11 and you see other people doing something, you just do it, without understanding the entire implication of that thing. Everyone and their dog had a Fursona, so I did too. The biggest inspiration to me, by far as a kiddo, was Warriors, by Aaron Hunter. I've been reading the books for years, and was compelled even further into cat insanity when I learned that there were other kids just as passionate about the Murder Cat saga as I was. So it was only natural that my first persona would be a cat. I mean, come on, isn't this what peak performance looks like? I was also really into another book series at the time, which I don't really hear a lot of people talk about these days. Wolves of the Beyond, by Catherine Lasky. Not to mention, Wolf's Rain was a very popular piece of media on DeviantArt at the time, so naturally I marched my stupid little self over to Google and was searching for a wolf name generator. I don't know if fantasy name generator was a thing back in those days. The Wayback Machine actually only shows archives for the site back to 2012, so it's possible, but unlikely. But I nonetheless found myself a sick-ass name for my cat, Akalia. As you can imagine, as a 12-year-old kiddo, I didn't really have access to any fancy pants programs like a lot of young artists do today. All my art was initially done in good old MS Paint. How I miss you. Eventually, I also switched over to the oh-so-fancy Paint.net, a program which is a bit of an upgrade from our old friend Paint, but not by much. If we examine this relic of an image, we can see how masterful my 12-year-old brain was in creating a truly original persona. I mean, American short-haired, skilled fighter, knows a lot about stars, what's not to love? I don't know why the hell I even put this down, because I most certainly did not know, and still do not know, jack shit about stars. I also apparently thought of myself as a great friend, but also a cool and edgy lone wolf. And can also talk to humans, which kind of begs the question, do other personas of this era not have the ability to talk to humans? Is that not a thing you have access to unless you specify that on your character sheet? In any case, a huge part of Akalia's design was also this spiral symbol in her bandana. As a kid, I liked to boast that I'd come up with this symbol by myself, but I'm almost certain that I found this by googling mysterious symbol or something like that on Google Images. Reverse Google image search doesn't give an exact hit, but it's pretty clear that this isn't a unique symbol by any means. I was definitely an inspired kid, if you can call it that. While Akalia is very much of this era, I think some context on what life was like for me growing up is also pretty important in how she looked and how I'm choosing to redesign her here. I grew up in a very conservative Christian household, and I had very limited access to any kind of secular media. Which, for those of you who aren't aware, secular means anything not religious. So anything not Christian or like explicitly about God, that's secular. So DeviantArt was, in some ways, my first little glimpse into the outside world. Because of that though, a lot of what I made, my parents very heavily monitored. I have a lot of memories of drawing Warriors fan art and being chewed at by my mom for drawing ungodly content. Listening to any kind of secular music was also something I wasn't allowed to do unless it was explicitly approved by my parents. So a lot of the music of this era that was really popular with kids my age was just straight up not accessible to me. But I like to imagine that if I wasn't so restricted, I'd have been rocking out to My Chemical Romance and Green Day like no other. I think you can really see how clean my art was around this time. I was really fascinated by the edgy, alternative styles of the era. But as a person growing up in a high control religion, I was expected to be in the world, but not of it. Dressing emo or goth wasn't modest, and it certainly was not godly. As such, I wanted to give Akalia a lot of the marks of this era. Dyed hair, accessories, makeup, stockings, gloves, and the piercings of that day. Beanies and long hair that absolutely would make any of my church members gasp in horror at how worldly I was looking. Honestly, I still carry a lot of trauma from my childhood and religion, to the degree that I was diagnosed with CPTSD as a result of it, though I'm happy to say that I'm now in remission from that. But I still look back at my younger self with a lot of sympathy and care. I was also a queer kid with no language at all to describe my inner experiences, and I was also pretty deeply brainwashed into believing that LGBTQ people were literally devils. And as a result, I think I held a lot of internal hatred for who I was, and I unfortunately took that out on other people. Needless to say, I was a pretty obnoxious kid, and I'm really sorry to anyone who had to interact with me at that time because I definitely was not the best person to have known or hang out with. I'd like to think that if I had someone back then to say that it was okay to be queer, and that being neurodivergent was not something to be ashamed of, and I wasn't a horrible person as I was led to believe by my church, maybe things would have gone differently. I know a lot of other queer people have similar histories of that time in their childhood. I guess this is all to say, I'd like to think that my younger self would be proud of how far I've come. A lot of the reason that I continue to draw today is because I know how much art mattered to me as a kid. Not just as an interest, but literally a survival mechanism. It was a space that I was able to express myself, even if I was censored in a lot of ways. In any case, I hope you found my little redesign interesting. And if you enjoyed this little story time, please leave a comment, or like and subscribe to get notified when I upload in the future. I hope you all have a great day. Bye!